if you can make a lot of excuses. Like, I can't do this because of that. I can't do this. I have a terrible territory. I have this. I have that. You know what? Everyone has difficulties. And you can overcome them. You can just get more creative. Like,
I was never done that before. That was weird. I don't know if you heard that on your end. Did you hear that?
I did.
Oh, that was strange. Like, I guess that's gonna be like part of our intro. But anyways,
That's a thing.
yeah.
That's for real. You're recording me, and I approve.
All right, perfect. Welcome back, everybody. Stop Interviewing, Start Sign. I'm your host, Philip Meyer. Sorry about the weird computer voice there. It's never done that before. If you guys are watching this video, please do me a favor. Go down to the bottom of the screen right here. Click like and subscribe. It really helps out with the channel. And also, don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a private message if you have questions or comments, or comment on my YouTube channel as well. But Beth, is it Spanier? How do you say your last name, Beth?
So my husband's family says Spanier, and my son says Spanier.
Ooh, a French one. Okay. All right. So Beth, thank you so much for jumping on the show. I really appreciate it. I've honestly been looking forward to talking to you for quite some time. I know we had a brief by brief, it was a 40-minute phone call like 2 days ago, but I know we had a phone call a couple days ago just to kind of get to know each other. But I've really been impressed with the things that you post on your LinkedIn page, and also with the way that you support reps on social media. I think that's awesome. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun because we all learn from each other.
Absolutely. So, Beth, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Like, how did you get started in sales? Was it something that you've always wanted, or was it just something that you kind of just jumped into?
I think it was something I was destined for. I come from a family with 5 kids, and it was a super competitive family. And, we were always the family that sold the most chocolate for like the fundraisers. And my brother and I were very entrepreneurial. I think like at age 10, we had a little cart that we snuck into the local golf course and sold candy and sodas. And I think I baked cookies and sold those too. And we would sell like from our garden out on the street. So it was just something we always did. And when I went to college, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to live the American dream. I wanted to marry some rich guy and be a housewife and raise kids, and thought,
me too.
That's for me. And my father was like, there's no way you're going to college. I'm spending this money to get an MRS degree, and you're not going to be a teacher because you can't make any money. And I was just like, oh, okay. And he's like, and I said, so what should I do? Because my dad was very controlling. And he's like, you should go into business. So I took a whole bunch of business classes, and I fell in love with real estate. In college, I think my senior year, I interned with Coldwell Banker Commercial, and that was right around when my dad died. And so that was like a changing thing, and I just started realizing, like, no one's going to take care of me other than me, and I better find something where I can make a lot of money and support myself, because no one's taking care of me. And I interned at Coldwell Banker for two brokers. One was a very, very bright woman. Don't even know her name. I can't remember, but I learned so much from her. And basically what I came out of that experience with her knowing was that a woman, so this was in the mid 80s, should not go into commercial real estate because it's an old boys deal. And the other guy that I worked for, I think his name was Pat Horan, and at the time I didn't think he was a very bright man, but he played baseball for the University of Arizona, and I think he also played for I don't know, maybe the Cardinals or something. I don't even remember if that was really his name, but I think that's what it was. And he always would answer the phone, Pepperon. And but he'd come back and he's like, sweetie, I need you to do this for me. I just played golf with so-and-so, and tomorrow they're gonna, give me some money and I'm gonna buy like a shopping center for them or something. And he did so much business and all he did was play golf. And I was like, huh? And it took me a long time to realize that, yes, you could be like the woman and be so smart and have a plan and do it the right way, but not be successful, but then be, Pat Moran, who does everything because it's all about relationships. So that really stuck with me. But when I graduated, I had a girlfriend who was a stewardess for American Airlines. And I had gone to see her in Texas, and she was like, Beth, you got to do this. This is totally fun. And I'm like, I like to travel. I'll go work for American Airlines. So I didn't make it through the third interview. And when I came home and I didn't get the job, my older brother was like, okay, so now what? And I'm like, I really don't know. And he's like, well, I think you should go into real estate. And he said, I have friends, one is the broker at Prudential in Scottsdale for residential. And then I can help you find something commercially in Phoenix. And I was like, well, back in the late 80s, who sold real estate? Housewives, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm not going to do, residential real estate with a bunch of housewives. I have a college degree. And, I'll just do the commercial, even though I said I shouldn't do it. You can't tell me no. I'm going to prove myself wrong. So I jumped into commercial real estate and 100% commission right out of college, partnered with a girlfriend, and somehow made it work. And I went and dug in like that woman told me what to do. And I followed her little game plan, and I hooked up with a broker, a commercial firm who he owned a bunch of shopping centers and medical office buildings. So I did his leasing. But at the time, Phoenix was really expanding, and I just copied her plan. I went to a convention in Vegas and beforehand prospected on the different companies, so there was like Great Clips was there. There was a sub chain. I don't know if they're still in Utah called Port of Subs. Are they still in business?
I'm not sure. I think
they're based out of Utah. So I landed them, at a very young age in my early 20s to be their real estate rep for doing all of their site development in Arizona. So that kind of got me going. I sold an office building and I did a whole bunch of leasing, and I started a little trick of mine, a prospecting trick of reading the want ads on Sunday. So if a company was hiring a bunch of people, they're going to need office space. So I would show up there on Monday. They would think I was applying for the job and just say, how many people are you hiring? You're talking. And the next thing, I would find them more office space. And so I I was doing that for a few years. And my mom and I went to New Orleans and had some frozen yogurt at a place called Freshens and decided that's it. We're going to the frozen yogurt business. And that's really where I got going, and everything is I learned, my mom and I owned that store for 9 years. And my mom basically the first week cut strawberries and just said, okay, this was fun. I'll come and help out when you need me. And I ran that business. So I learned about raising my son from, being an employer and taking care of little high school kids, customer service, everything. But that's where selling toppings. My franchise sold more toppings than any other Heidi's frozen yogurt shop, because I taught the kids how to do suggestive selling. It was just like they had to come back from that yogurt machine with a cup of yogurt, hold it in front of our beautiful yogurt bar with the topping bar, and suggest 3 different toppings to go on the cup. And if they couldn't do that, they couldn't have a job. So, you would never sell just a yogurt. It was always with hot fudge and Reese's on top, and oh, you want some sprinkles on that too, and just hold it over there. And we would go through so many strawberries just through suggestive selling. So like all these things that we do now, I learned through my business. But that's how I got started, really. And then when I came home from my honeymoon, my husband got fired from his job, and that was the end of that. And we moved to Chicago.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting that you have that experience, and that's kind of what led you down the road of sales, because I find more often than not, like it's very rare to find someone who has just always wanted to be a sales rep or to be like an outside sales professional or like a sales trainer or something. Like it's usually a very organic way to get into the industry, like how you mentioned with the toppings, right? To be able to teach that to somebody and to understand the value of that skill, whether or not those kids that you employed understood the value of it and were able to use it later on in their professions is one thing, but for you to understand just how valuable that is, that's pretty impressive, honestly.
No, I didn't know what I was doing. Like
Right.
I didn't know. I just knew like I couldn't just survive on selling a cup of yogurt. Like we had all these toppings, like we had to sell them, and people don't want to, like, if you say, I mean, why does McDonald's do what they do? You want fries with that? You know, because you're not going to say I want fries. They'll
Right.
say, oh yeah, sure, add those on. Soda, yeah, add that on. It just, I think as consumers, we're trained just to be told what we want. We're afraid, a lot of people are afraid to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, I don't know, like, I think when you're thrown into situations, you learn. Like the most valuable lesson I learned was when, so my product came from California and I was in Arizona, so it got trucked over once a week. So I had to be really, really prudent on how I did my ordering with respect to, you know, my walk-in only had so much room for that yogurt. And so I had to order smartly. And if I didn't have enough, we would run out, and that would be very costly. And 3 weeks in a row, I was running out, and it just didn't make sense. The sales didn't equate. And I finally went up to one of the girls, and I'm just like, we're missing like 2 tubs of yogurt here. And she kind of just gave me this face, and I'm like, are we throwing yogurt away when we make like a mistake in terms of the flavors? And she's like, well, I'm not admitting to anything. And so we had a meeting with the whole staff, and I said, listen, nobody screws up more than me. We're all human. We weren't born perfectly.
Yep.
You know, we learn from our mistakes. And I said, you know, some of our best flavors that we've come up with have been from mistakes. And I said, so if you make a mistake in terms of adding the flavoring, just leave it in the walk-in. We'll make a flavor out of it. I promise. Don't worry about it. And these are my golden rules. Like, I want to hear about it before, I want to know about it before I hear about it. And that's how I raised my son. And he went off to, kindergarten, and the first day before he gets on the bus, we're there, and I just said, Shay, there's a folder in your backpack. I said, you know what that's for? That's for the teacher to send notes back and forth. And I said, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to get in so much trouble, but mommy will always love you. So if anything ever happens,
I love that you said that. You're like, you're gonna get in so much trouble.
Yeah, and I just always said, you didn't come out of me being perfect. That's why we go to school, because we learn, and we learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I just said, Shay, if something happens at school, good, bad, or ugly, I want you to tell me about it. I'm never going to not love you. I might be disappointed, but I will always love you.
Yeah. Yeah, for
so,
sure.
I want you to know, every day, still to this day, he will call and tell me, like, the good, bad, and the ugly. And I remember he got in trouble one day at school, and the teacher called me, and she's like, your son's not such an angel that you make him out to be. I'm like, I know about this, I know about that. And she's like, you do? I'm like, he tells me everything.
Yeah.
But I think that's where I learned about accountability. And that's such an important thing about, like, in sales is, when you screw up, you need to own it.
Yep.
And when we as a company make a mistake, like, how are people going to respect us if we can't own it? So I think, like, I care a lot about, my customers. I care a lot about UniFirst. And, I think that's why I'm really passionate about, like, my word means so much to me. And when, I signed a customer up and he said to me, you salespeople, you're all the same. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, oh, well, you tell me this and you tell me that. And then, I sign it on the line and I never see you again. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that's not how I am. I owned a business. I get it. I understand, how hard it is for you to write this check every week for $75. And that, this is a big deal, like, because you've been going to Costco and finding your things. You've been washing your towels and washing your aprons and using that dirty mop for longer than you should. I've been there. I've done it. And what we're giving you is the freedom to have time to spend more on your marketing. What we're doing is giving you the freedom to be more with your kids, be more present. And I understand, and we're going to be here for you. And I said, we will make mistakes, and you're going to need, but we will be there, and you can count on us. And I get a lot of calls on the weekend, and I go and bring toilet paper, towels, whatever. I keep some towels at my house because things happen. Yeah. Maybe right now, especially now, people are getting busier, and they're running through things. But we're not just salespeople. We're extensions of their business. We have to help them, and that's the word that we give them. So I care a lot about our customers, and and it's nice when customers say you're different, and that's what's so special about UniFirst, is that I can tell that you guys care about me.
Yeah, that's going to be such a powerful thing too, is your personal experience with running a business, right? Because to a certain extent, like I have a very similar conversation with customers in that when they say things like, all you sales reps are the same. I see you guys, you then take off, you vanish. Like, two things I tell them. Number one is that out of curiosity, I wonder if you might know this, because you've been just as active on LinkedIn as like I have, right? Like, do you know what the average tenure that a rep has within the laundry industry before they either get a promotion or they leave? You know what it is?
I have no idea.
So like, it's not like an official
Probably
number.
like 2 years.
It's very, very close. It's a year and 7 months. I don't know why that number is so magical, but that's typically what happens. So how I do that with customers, I'll tell them, well, listen, like the average turnover rate with my competition, with my industry, is like a year and 7 months, which means that right now, because I'm competing with them, that's what I'm competing at. So somebody that's only been here for like a year and 7 months. I've been here for combined like 6 years, right? So what that means to you, Mr. Customer, is I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to come back. I'm going to check on your service, because as much as I enjoy going like this and knocking on doors and making cold calls and getting escorted out by people sometimes, like, it's so much easier to come back and say, hey, Beth, how's service going? By the way, what's your neighbor's name, right? That's so much more valuable. And the fact that you were able to speak to that, I think, really builds up that trust. So,
well, it's also like, I don't like to be oversold. And I remember my first year, one of my managers said to me, Beth, you could sell a few more towels. You don't have to just sell them one mop a week. And I'm like, that's okay. They can add it on later. I think you gain more credibility by telling a customer, like, most people do this, but let's start you out smaller so that you can build into it. Because the worst thing that could happen is you oversell it, and it's a more commission, more sales credit, but at the end of the day, they're going to hate you. I'd rather them call and say, you know what, how do we adjust these volumes? That I need more. So, but I will sell them the whole kitchen sink. I just might not sell like a lots of it.
Right. Yeah. I think it depends on the customer. I think kind of what falls in line with that, and of course, this is the cliche that every LinkedIn post, every meme, every picture with a caption has, is is we should listen to the customer, right? We should listen to that customer's needs. And I totally agree with that, right? Where I think it gets super convoluted and becomes a cliche is that we listen, but really we're just hearing what we want to hear. And so we end up selling what we think that customer may actually need, right? Like, for example, I had a customer today who, with one of my competitors, they have, I don't know, like 15 or 14, like 3x10 mats. And I was like, do you really need all these mats? They're like, no, not really. In fact, we keep telling them to like take it off and they never do. And I'm like, well, I think you really only need like 8 of these and you should be okay, right? And then like understanding the knowledge, like having like your product knowledge in that too kind of helps, because if you can speak to like how many steps are on the mat or like how far apart they should be, that's important as well. So I totally agree with you there. So what do you think, because you mentioned this earlier and I kind of want to jump back into it, is you mentioned with what was the company that you said was like an all boys club?
Oh, in commercial real estate. That was
Yeah.
that was in college where I interned. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Caldwell Banker.
So like, I'm wondering if you can speak to this maybe, because I've said this for some time, right? It doesn't matter if you are a man, if you're a woman, like being a good sales rep is really the work ethic that you put into it. I'm wondering, can you speak to kind of what your...
Oh, see, I'm probably the wrong person to talk about that.
No, this is great. That's what I'm hoping to get into. I want to know what your...
The reason I'm at UniFirst is we've moved around a lot. I don't know if you know, my husband's in sports radio, and for many years, so for many years, like when I got home from our honeymoon and I sold the store for probably the next 15 years of our life, I followed him around and just did like, customer service jobs based around my son's school and hockey schedule. And my whole thing was just to work to pay for hockey. And that was it. And then, I don't know, about 10 years ago, fortunes change, and just like businesses run their courses and jobs run their courses, my husband's older, and we were having issues with my son was getting bullied when we were in Texas. So my son and I moved to Buffalo for him to go to a prep school to play hockey. So there wasn't as much travel, and my husband stayed in Dallas. And so we kind of had 2 households going, and that's when I had to re-enter the workforce.
Wow.
And as a mom who, I was pretty successful on my own before, I had a kid, but I took myself out of the workforce. And to get back to where I am now was a journey and a struggle. And I lost confidence in myself. I was, I wish this on no one. Like, I'm sure there's a lot, and I talk to a lot of women my age, and they struggle with the same thing, and it's harder. A lot of people look down on you. They don't think you have the computer skills, that, you were just a mom. What do you know? Well, we multitask and we can do everything, and we're Wonder Women, and, we're expected to do everything and have a smile on our face, and we're never sick. So, it took a little bit, but so we moved to, I had a nice job in Buffalo, and then we moved here for my son so that we can be as a family, and we moved here to Vermont. And my husband, he works, like, he had his job with Fox, and so we built a studio in the house, so he works here, and then he got a job locally, so he does that. But I got a job at a radiator company, so I was doing inside sales, customer service, and it was a really great job, but they didn't take care of the customers, and the phone stopped ringing, so they let me go and promoted my assistant. So I was working some little jobs, and my husband's like, why don't you come work at the radio station here? And I'm like, I don't know about selling radio, Arnie. I've been in the trade, you know, working inside sales in the trades for a long time. That's really my wheelhouse. And he's like, no one knows radio better than you. We've been on this journey for over 20 years. I think you know radio. So, all right, so I got a job, and the station hired me as the lowest paying salesperson. Even when I was working there, being successful, they were bringing on salespeople, paying them, starting them out higher than what they paid me. I think they just thought, oh, she's Arnie's wife, we're just gonna hire her. She's, you know, just keep her quiet, keep Arnie happy. And I crushed it. And I was successful there because I followed my husband's lead, and Arnie's a tremendous storyteller. Mm. And I kind of put two and two together, the Pat Horan with the relationships, the stories. So they weren't my stories, but they were success stories. Arnie is a personality, and when he was doing Afternoon Drive in Los Angeles, he was sent out on all these sales calls, and basically they just wanted to meet Arnie, and then they would sign up. Same thing happened in Dallas. Same thing happened in Phoenix. It was over and over, and Arnie's like, I'm sick of making salespeople a lot of money. You do it. So I think like one of my first weeks at the radio station, Arnie's like, I want you to sell some segments on our show. And I'm like, okay. He goes, you remember that segment in Dallas that we did? It was Gone But Not Forgotten. And I'm like, oh yeah. He goes, go sell it to a funeral home. They're still on the radio station, El Madrine, Gone But Not Forgotten. It's a segment on Tuesdays for 5 minutes at the top of the hour, like the first hour, where they just talk about someone who passed on that anniversary of that day, you know, whether sports or not sports. And it's sponsored by El Madrine, where you can have a sports, even a sports thing for your casket or urn. So I would go in and just say, oh, you know, in this market, this could happen, and da-da-da-da-da. And I like did very well. Like the station's billing and for the sports station was crazy good. But what was happening is, you know, there was 4 stations that I was selling for, and the hosts there in this market, they don't make they don't get paid based on the ratings. They just get a nice salary, whether they show up and do a great job or do a bad job, they get the same pay. The salespeople in radio are 100% commission, and you only get paid when the client pays. So if the host, you know, forgot to do a read or didn't do a very good read, or maybe the station forgot to run their commercials and the customer didn't pay the bill, who didn't get paid? Me. Yep. So in 1 month, I had 3 different stations and hosts not do their job properly. I lost $5,000 worth of income that month. And I went to the bosses and I said, you know, I did everything. I brought all these clients in. I built my book of business up from here to here, and you've just taken away my raise that I did for myself. And he says to me, oh, sweetie, you make enough money. Yikes. And I came, you know, on the drive home with Arnie, I said, you know what, I'm done. And I talked to somebody, and then the most wonderful woman in my life, Terry Sabatos, she is a recruiter, calls me and says, how about UniFirst? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough for a company like that. I had really low self-confidence because, you know, when people like put you down for so long, then you start feeling like I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I can't do it. And I think, you know, this process with Terry, like, oh, this is UniFirst, they would love someone like you, and everybody goes to President's Club there. You can make a lot of money. And it just was a total mindset change with me. Yeah. And so it was, I kind of thought, like, she showed me the plan and how you get to President's Club. I wrote it down in my head. I'm like, I just have to sell $100 a week, and I'm going to go to President's Club. And that's what I do every week. Wow. And that's what I sell. Yeah. But it's all in a mindset. And since I have left the station, I've really, like, you know, I went through like a personal transformation. Like when I knew I started to like, I think it was the February before I left the station, I lost a lot of weight and that helped with my confidence. But, and just knowing like when I set my mind to something, I can do it and I believe in myself. And my husband calls it my Tony Robbins wife, you know, but I think I've listened to Tony Robbins once, but it's like, but I just, if you don't believe in yourself and you don't care about yourself, why should somebody else? If you don't believe in the product that you're selling, why should someone buy from you?
Yeah.
And if, you know, you can make a lot of excuses. Like, I can't do this because of that. I can't do this. I have a terrible territory. I have this, I have that. You know what? Everyone has difficulties. And you can overcome them. You can just get more creative. Like, you can find things. Like, I don't know, I just find a way. And I drive down the road and I think, oh, we can help them. We can help them. We can help them. And it's just getting out of the car and going to help them.
Yeah, that's extremely important too, because like I think I talked to I forget who I told this to. Maybe I wrote an article on LinkedIn about it, but like it was about working smarter, not harder. And I think that has been said so many times it's become an excuse. And I'm guilty of saying it too. Like well, I want to work smarter and really plan it out. But like if you're getting out of the car and you're hitting every single door on the street, to me, that person's going to be way more successful than someone who sat there for 2 hours at Starbucks and like planned out which businesses they were going to go like target, right? Yeah, that's amazing. Like I know for a fact, Universe is extremely happy that you came on because you've been to President's Club twice. Like, and you're going to go again this year, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome.
So like when I was in, thank you. When I was in real estate, I learned to have my head on a swivel. And I haven't had an accident, but when I'm driving, even when I wasn't in real estate, it's just my head, I was just trained to always like look around, like look at like all of the businesses, like, oh, you know what? A dry cleaner would be great in that shopping center. I'm going to find a dry cleaner and put it in that shopping center. So I still, when I drive around, I'm always like looking at, oh, there's an empty business. You know, I got to keep so I'd write it down and I keep my eye on that business, you know, to see if there's a permit. And then, you know, maybe there's something going in and ask, you know, the next door neighbor business, like, have you heard what's going in with, so I do a lot of that, but it's just, yesterday I was at the gas station and I saw this truck, and I've seen the trucks before, but I thought it was a different company. And I was just like, why is he filling up here when they own, you know, their own station? So, you know, I said to the guy, I'm like, who do you work for? And he gave me the name. I'm like, oh, is that close to here? And he's like, yeah, we're just down on Commerce. And I'm like, oh, and who's the owner? We just started talking. I'm like, and he's like, well, why are you asking? I'm like, because you need some clothes. These are nice trucks. Right. Yeah, so we'll see. But it's like, you just never know who you're going to talk to, you know, and meet. But you have to put yourself out there in those situations.
Yeah.
You know, and not be afraid. They're not going to, so what if you make an ass out of yourself? No one's going to remember.
Yeah. I think that self-confidence thing you're talking about is super valuable too, because like, I think for the most part, I think salespeople, like when I meet salespeople, there's a lot of them that are really insecure. And I was that way when I first started in sales, especially outside sales, because I'm like, hold on, I have to go into business.
All are.
Yeah. Like, I'm like I'm super guilty of it. In fact, I actually met a psychologist because I wrote an article on LinkedIn about my battle with imposter syndrome. And she actually reached out to me and we had this whole long conversation about
it. With what?
With, it's known as like imposter syndrome. Have you ever heard that expression before?
What is that?
So
no.
It's like I first heard about it from Will McDonald, who was also on the podcast too. Shout out, Will. Love you, man. Can't wait to have you back.
Down.
Yeah, but essentially it's like it's a real thing with people when they feel like the success that they've had in their life isn't really because of the work they put in. It's because they got lucky, right? So say, for example, they're like, I go to President's Club.
No, you create your own luck.
Right.
You create your own luck.
Yes, I agree with you. But there are people like myself that they have looked back at their success and they go, well, it was just kind of like this happened. I'm really not as good as I thought I was. Like a perfect example is like when I used to compete in martial arts, right? Because I would go into tournaments and I would win first place, but in the back of my head, I think, well, I never actually fought the best guy. The best guy got knocked out in round number 3 by this guy, and I ended up fighting that guy, but I beat him because I already knew what he was. But there's always some reason that you didn't actually deserve what you got, right? It's a very real thing.
Oh,
It
no.
sounds crazy, right?
I mean, look at like sometimes like the number one seed will get knocked off.
Yeah,
That has nothing to do with you. You played the best that was put in front of you.
right. Exactly. So that's something that people like Will McDonald, they actually help with because they'll talk to you about it and they'll kind of like explain to you why that wasn't. One of the ways people get treated by this, from what I heard, is that they have a different sense of what's the word, like a different sense of accomplishment, or like if they have some side like some sort of reward from like an external force, like a trophy, to them that's validation that they actually did it, and that's why trophies are very important, right? Whereas somebody that doesn't suffer from that will have an internal reward based system. Does that make sense? Like they don't need a trophy. They feel like they've already done
No,
it.
I get it.
Yeah.
I know. I understand, but like so my son's a goalie,
Hmm.
okay? And you know, it's so hard. If anyone has children and their kids want to be goalies, I recommend run far away. But it's as a parent watching your son, and maybe it's the same as like a pitcher in baseball.
Hmm.
It's awful because it's always the goalie's fault. You
Right.
know, the defense could have fallen down. Someone could have turned the puck over. But your kid should have stopped it, right? And they all look at you like, oh, should I let a goal in? It's awful. And then if he makes a big save, oh, that was lucky.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah, that's exactly
but
right.
yeah, he was lucky to make the save. You know how much he practiced and prepared and got himself in the position to get that to make that save. Like, you don't ever say you're lucky, because you put yourself out there. Maybe one sail's easier than the next. You're doing the work. You should. I think my husband's home. You should never think about that.
Right. Yeah. That's how I feel about it too. Like, I mean, it's funny because like when I talk to people that like I used to compete with in like martial arts and stuff, and like all the people I thought were better than me, that's the same impression they had
Sorry.
of me when I was competing with them, which is so crazy to hear because I'm like, I was always afraid of you. And he's like, I was always afraid of you. Like, like, we talk about that stuff. But like in sales, I think it's interesting because you do come across certain opportunities at like the right time, right? Like if you have a big account that just all of a sudden it pops and now you're 300% to quota in the first quarter. Now it's like, oh man, that's awesome. Everybody else around you will go, you just got lucky, but they may not see all the work that goes into that. And that's something I have to constantly remind myself of because I do suffer from that syndrome, like quite often, unfortunately.
Well, I hope you get over it,
Yeah.
because you work really hard and you deserve all the success
Oh, thank
that you work. Some sales are harder, some sales are easier, but if you don't put yourself in the position, what do you wouldn't have been there.
you. Right.
And I remember I was in one of my stunts when we were in California is I went back and I went into residential real estate, and I was that housewife that did it. And I remember, like, I had an open house, and this actress, I forget her name, she was on, my husband always says, like, her name, I forgot, whatever. And she comes into the open house, and I end up selling her a house for over $1 million.
Wow.
And, oh, wait a minute, what just happened?
Can you see?
So I remember someone in the office said, oh, God, you were so lucky you did that open house. And I'm like, first of all, I did the open house, thank you. And I advertised it. I sent out little postcards to all the neighbors to come. And guess what? She came. It wasn't lucky, and it wasn't chance.
Right.
I put it as my efforts. So you create your luck.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you find $1 on the floor, that wasn't lucky. You walked in that area.
This is true. Absolutely. So
there's two ways of looking at something, Philip.
yeah.
You could look at it positively, or you could look at it negatively. I always choose to look at the positive. That's easier.
Yeah.
My son made a comment to me before. I am a worrier, and he said, "Mom, why do you worry?" And I'm like, "Oh, because if this happens and this happens," he goes, "Why don't you worry about it when it becomes a problem?" Same thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the whole reason I wanted to have you on the show, Beth, is because I do sense that from you when you post things on LinkedIn, that you're very positive mindset oriented. And that's super important, because today it's so easy to focus on the negative stuff, especially with things like the political climate or the housing market or the economy or COVID, when like a lot of people are losing their jobs. Like, it's super, super important to have that mindset. Let me ask you this question, because I'm sure that you've probably been asked this before by reps, but I know I'm going to get comments, or I'm going to get reps that like will go, "Why didn't you ask her this question when you had the chance?" So as a President's Club achiever like you are now 3 times over, what's the sauce? What's the secret? How do you get there, not just once, but now 3 times in a row?
So every time they mail me these postcards, my refrigerator is peppered in them. Okay. I was told that everyone goes to President's Club. So I came into this company believing that. And so my mindset is, it's not that hard. This is what I need to do on a consistent basis to do it. And nobody's going to do it for me. And listen, when I had my interview 3 years ago, Phil Dream, who's now my general manager, but was my branch manager at the time, asked me, "Why do you want this job? What financially are you going to do if we can change your life?" And at the time, I was doing very well at the radio station, but I wasn't sleeping at night, and they weren't taking care of clients the way I would want clients to be taken care of. I thought the integrity wasn't there. So I needed to make a change, because I didn't feel good about what I was doing. And it was becoming negative. And so I said to him, "I want this job because we want to do our basement, and I want to send my son through college without any debt." And my son was starting college right then. So I am in my basement, which we just did this past winter.
It's very nice.
And thank you, Universe. Thank you, Universe. And my son will be a senior this year. And here's another mom tip for you. I told him that I would pay for his school, his loans, if you get each semester, you get above a 3.3, you owe nothing. If you get between a 3.0 and a 3.3, you pay 50% for that semester. And if you get below a 3.0, 100%. I'm on the hook for all of his school. And it's all paid for. Thank you, Universe.
That's amazing.
So so he had skin in the game.
Yeah.
And so he had reason to say to the buddies, "You know what? I got to stay in and study." And they're like, "If you don't have to pay for school, you go study." So that was my huge why. And now my huge why is, I don't want to be a greeter at Walmart when I'm 70. So nothing wrong with that job. And I probably would end up being really happy doing that job, but I don't want to have to do that. I want to have choices. So I think everything changed when I did go to President's Club, because I always want to go to President's Club. I think you're going to go next year because you have a nice deal that it sounds like it's going to go. But I hope to see you there next year.
Absolutely.
I hope to see you there. Like, I hope I can get back there to meet you, because it is just the most wonderful experience. We work for the most phenomenal company. I came home drinking like the greenest Kool-Aid. And, when you talk to, like, it wasn't even just other salespeople. It was, the RSRs, to see like those ones, the Aldo Croati winners. They're amazing. Like, can you imagine like having 100% retention and keeping those customers so happy? Like, how is it they do that? That's incredible.
Yeah.
And to talk to them, to see how they take care of the customers and their perspective, I think helped me be a better seller, and to bring that message back to our branch about how like we need to really value our customers because of what they're telling me, and to share that with our RSRs. But it's I don't know, it's such an amazing experience, like, to see how they treat us and to know how much we're cared about and the support that we get, and not just about us, about our families. But yeah, I still drink the green Kool-Aid. But you never not want to make it. So I think that's the continuous drive, and it's a lot of pressure now because you want to keep going.
Yeah.
And how much is there to sell? I just have to keep finding and getting creative and finding new opportunities. So
yeah, absolutely.
Challenged.
Well, that's very, it's amazing just to go.
But to answer your,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but Philip, to answer your question is, it's you have to figure out, like, my Phil said to me, the first week, I was very fortunate when I first started, because in my territory, I was able to go back to a lot of my radio customers. And I knew a lot of people here. So that was really good. And I went off the relationship thing. And so I knew like one of my customers was going to be opening, he had a food truck and he was going to be opening a restaurant. And last year he opened a second restaurant. But Phil, and it was a small deal. And Phil says to me, I hope you're not going to be the queen of the seas. And I'm like, what's so wrong with that? And he's like, well, you're not going to get to President's Club selling $35, $50. And I'm like, that's 3 a week. Sure, I can do that. And my first year, that's what I did.
Wow.
I think I had one big deal. I sell a lot of small deals because you know what? They're just as important as the big ones. And if you focus so much on a large deal, I mean, I've been fortunate this year, like it's been a lot of big deals for me, but that's rare. But if you focus so much on the big ones and they don't happen, then you have a really crappy quarter. But if you, yeah. I think doing, like, I get very angry with myself if I don't have a close each week. And, that weekend of not having a close, I'm working Sunday. I'm trying to figure out like what I can go sell next week, like doing some prospecting work and figuring out like maybe do like a new email chain or something. But you have to, when I was in commercial real estate, I learned that what you do today pays off 6 to 9 months from now.
Right.
So, I need to start thinking about the fall, like right now, like what businesses do I need to be targeting for the fall? And that will pay off. Like, that's where I need to be, like, getting like ready for my MAT account stuff, like thinking about that. But every deal, big, small, little, huge, they're all just as important. Those customers need our help. And just because they're a little person doesn't mean we should value them less than someone who's a big person, because you never know, that small food truck guy can end up opening 2 restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that's always resonated with me. And that's ultimately why I think I've been successful is selling those smaller accounts too. But on the flip side, like, like as I've gotten better, as my tenure has gotten higher and higher, it's been easier to go after the big accounts and to have those presentations and to get those looks and to follow up. But most of the time, too, like I think what you're saying is absolutely correct, because fast forward 6 months, and that's when that bigger one's actually gonna pop, right? Because it's either a contractual agreement or because that's just how long the process takes. Like I know our national rep and I've been working in this hospital
Yeah.
for, it's been like a year now. It's been crazy. So yeah, I
Yeah,
totally.
but I forget what I was gonna say. It was a
I
good
do it
thing.
all the time.
I forgot.
that's that's
I'm getting old.
well, you don't look old. You don't have any gray hair, whereas
I know what it was. I have a lot of gray hair.
oh, I can't.
Me and the coloring are, no,
Oh,
it's, anyways, it's a girl thing. But what I wanted to say about treating a C customer the same as an A customer, I give a presentation. I make a presentation for every customer, even for $30 account. I make a PT, and I do a very nice presentation for them, and they're just as important. That customer needs it more than like a more sophisticated customer, because they need to understand our process and learn about how they're going to be treated and how we're going to manage them, versus just handing them a quote sheet and then the agreement. So I do a PT for every single customer.
that's awesome. That's a lot of work too, because I mean, you
But
probably
once you have all your slides made,
yeah.
it's not. So once you have all your slides made, I have like my deck that I make, and then I put the pricing. I have a price breakdown sheet, and I cut and paste the quote sheet into that, and so it's part of my process. But it doesn't take that long to do. But I just think it just shows them the universe difference on, you know what, big or small, like we care about you.
Yeah, that's important what you just said, the universe difference, because yeah, I mean, there's so many people that will just sling price against the wall and just hope it sticks, and that's not always going to be the best method of closing a deal, if any time, because it's funny, because like I always think to myself, after how many appointments, how many people I've seen, how many different businesses I've walked into with my career, there's always this little voice back of my head that goes, maybe it'll work this one time. And the rare times that I choose to listen to that voice, it never works. Like I don't know why I keep trying this tactic. Like it's a lot easier. I think I have the deal. I throw the price and like, yeah, go ahead, throw it back, and then they just ghost me. And then fast forward 3 months, I find out they're with my competitor. And it's like, I don't know why I keep listening to that stupid voice, but it happens.
You just never know. And I think you just have to ask enough questions and establish a good enough relationship. But it's also like not so much listening to them, but hearing them in terms of their timing. Because maybe their timing isn't the timing that you thought. Like they should want us right now, but they're not ready for whatever reason. We don't know. But you kind of got to let them know that you're not going anywhere, and you look forward to getting that phone call, because that's going to be the best phone call, because then you know they're ready.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just don't stop believing in yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, Beth, I want to say thank you again for jumping on my show today. I really appreciate it. You've been an absolute blast to talk to and to have on. Anybody that is listening to the show, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you want to connect with Beth on LinkedIn, feel free to look her up. Last name is spelled Spanier. First name Beth, Beth. Feel free to look up both of us and ask us any questions about working for UniFirst as well if you're interested in a career in that. And Beth, once again, thank you so much for jumping on.
Oh, this has been so much fun. I mean, I could talk forever about like about UniFirst and about our industry, because it's really an amazing opportunity. And if anyone is looking to change their life and work for a company that really truly cares about their people, it's not just a saying, they really do care about you, and you'll feel special. So
Absolutely. All
thank
right,
you.
guys. Well, thanks very much.
And I look forward to seeing you next year.
Yes, ma'am. That's the plan. I'll be there. All
I
right, guys.
hope so. Me too. I hope. We'll work towards. Okay, thank you.